Hello, friends. I'm actually getting ready to head over to the car dealership this evening as the relationship with my current vehicle is nearing an end. And it got me thinking as we've had more and more clients reaching out with questions surrounding auto purchasing and other facets that go along with this. Because of the moving parts and the interrelationships, there's actually more factors to consider than you would think on the surface. I'm going to make sure to break this down into several different parts of this conversation. The first thing, however, we have to think about is whether an actual vehicle purchase makes sense. So first off, from a cash flow standpoint, is it going to drive up your monthly payments to a point that's undesirable and put more pressure on you being able to meet other goals? The next question I would say is that specific vehicle needed? Or if it's putting too much pressure on you, is there a vehicle that might cost less, i.e. lower monthly payments, i.e. you could take those additional savings and put it towards a short-term goal, an emergency fund, retirement, whatever it may be. Also, let's assume you're paying cash instead of making a monthly payment. What will that do to your overall impact of your finances? Not having that cash readily available on the sideline, should there be an emergency, or the opportunity cost of other goals. Now, let's say it's absolutely required. Your car breaks down and you need a new vehicle. That's another conversation. But remember, whether you're leasing or purchasing, be aware of what this does to your auto insurance costs as well, and be prepared for a potential increase, especially if more expensive than your current vehicle. So next, if you decide to purchase over lease, what you need to ask yourself is, in fact, are you going to pay full cash? Are you going to pay no cash down or a combination? And the considerations with that. There are a few factors that go into this, and each person's situation is different, but this may be contingent on several things, including cash you need on the sideline for other goals, whether it's short-term, mid-term, or long-term, the opportunity cost of using that cash for other goals. Some other factors are the current vehicle price, the age and the mileage of the vehicle, how quickly it depreciates, things like the interest rate. Are there any incentives that they're providing you upfront by, let's say, financing versus paying cash? Could it make sense if you do have the cash to finance anyway, get some type of incentive upfront, and then maybe once that incentive period is over, just pay cash and close that out so you don't have a monthly payment? Other things to think about is a potential trade-in value down the road of the vehicle, and if you have another vehicle to trade in currently as well. Now, if you're purchasing, you want to consider whether new or used, okay? And this is something that's a pretty important takeaway here, folks. Let's say you absolutely want a brand new vehicle, that's one thing. But if you don't need a new vehicle and you're looking at a used versus a new vehicle, and I'm referring to purchasing here, not a lease, we want to look at what's called the optimization curve. Okay, so when we think about the optimization curve, it's actually exactly what it states it is. It is, we think about this curve here, and we think about what's the optimal point for you to purchase the vehicle. Optimal point being how many miles or years are on the vehicle. So let me use an easy example here. Most vehicles have an optimization point between about 1 and 3 years, depending on the brand and the make. Okay. And if we think about a brand new vehicle, as you're aware, the common saying is once you drive it off the lot, it goes down in value, right? So let's say someone buys a $40,000 vehicle, they drive it off the lot, and for example, it might be down to $35,000 in value, I should say, right on the spot. Okay. Now, that's a vehicle that's brand new. So we have some clients that say, well, Steve, why would I purchase a brand new vehicle? I want to buy the oldest one possible. Now, in the same breath, to the other extreme, if you buy a vehicle that, let's say, has 350,000 miles on it, that vehicle might require thousands of dollars of work every year just to maintain it's on its last leg. So you may not want to go to that extreme either. So the optimization curve tells us that with most vehicles, it's usually between 1 and 3 years where it makes sense to buy a vehicle within that range in terms of its age, because you've already depreciated a lot of the vehicle off the top, meaning you get a pretty good deal on it. You're saving a lot of money, but it's not going to require a lot of work, knock on wood, hopefully not a lot of work, for several years to go, just to give you as a reference point. So it's sort of that happy median point there. Okay, so that's something to think about, is the optimization curve. Next, would you consider leasing? Okay, sometimes leasing does make more sense than actually purchasing. When would leasing make sense? Let's say you have a high turnover on your vehicles. Could make sense to lease, right? Now, another reason to lease too is, let's say you just need a new vehicle, or your vehicle is on its last leg, but you just don't like the inventory that's out there. You're put in a precarious situation, you need another vehicle, and this is not going to be your end vehicle, one you're going to drive for another 5 to 10 years. You just need something to get you from point A to point B, and your vehicle is now broken down. Could be a situation that would make sense to lease there. So when it comes to leasing, there's something I want everyone to be aware of if you decide to go that route. And we call this the lease money factor, or this is what dealerships call it. It's pretty complex formula. I won't get into the details and math behind the formula today, but essentially the dealership uses, much like an interest rate, if you were charged interest on your home or to buy a vehicle, and it's a sort of a discounted interest rate is what they call it, using a depreciation schedule. And effectively what they're doing, the dealership is betting on how much they can make off you at the end of the lease. So let me frame this a little bit differently. Let's assume you decide to lease a vehicle, and the value at the date of the lease is $40,000, and the dealership uses a lease money factor, whatever they decide to use, and they come up with a buyout factor in, let's say, 3 years, and that's $20,000. What they're effectively saying is they think that in 3 years from now, they think that the vehicle is going to be worth about $20,000. Now, remember, when you lease a vehicle, most of the time you agree to the buyout price up front. And the vehicle car manufacturer or financing department has a lot of smart people working for them, actuaries, finance managers in the background. So usually they get this right in that their goal is to make money on this. Okay, so we have a lot of clients that say, Steve, I don't lease. There's no way that I would ever lease because of this money factor consideration. The dealer is always going to make money at the end of the deal. What I would have to buy out the car for from them is more than what it's worth. Now, that's not always the case, though. So keep this in mind, folks, right? For those of you that started leasing in late 2019, early 2020, hint, hint, this was COVID. There was supply chain issues. Prices of vehicles, used vehicles, held their value better than they did historically in other periods. And the dealerships got it wrong in that they didn't realize vehicles were going to hold their value. They didn't realize that inventory was going to be limited. And in addition to that, people weren't driving, so they weren't putting the mileage on their vehicles. So let me give you an example. We'll go back to that 40,000 again. Let's say someone leases a vehicle and the value is 40,000 as a starting point. And let's say using their lease money factor, they set the buyout at 20,000. Remember, folks, it's set ahead of time. Okay. So you set at 20. Well, I had several clients that we were working with. Fast forward a couple years, 3 years, let's say, when you're ready to buy the vehicle, you could have bought it at the predetermined price. Once again, let's say 20,000, but you could have turned around and sold it for 25,000 on the open market, as an example. So once again, the lease money factor the dealership uses, they're usually pretty good about making a profit most of the time. That's what they're in business for. But sometimes they do get it wrong, and it does favor you. So once again, just wanted to be aware of the lease money factor there. Now, when it comes to leasing, I think this is probably the most important takeaway I want all of you to be cognizant of here. Okay. And so we have a lot of clients that, let's say, they'll finance a vehicle rather than leasing, and they come up with some cash and they want to pay off the liability early, so they own the vehicle outright. Now, if we think about it on the leasing side, you can pay off the lease early. Let's say you have a monthly payment of $500 to make it easy, whatever it may be, and you have 1 year left to go on your lease, and you want to write them a check to have that lease covered ahead of time. In other words, the lease being paid off ahead of time. Okay. Here's the catch, though. When you are leasing a vehicle, you have to check with your P&C, your auto insurance company, before you decide to pay it off, if you typically are considering it. Most people don't. Some people do. They want to get that burden off their plate. So what happens when you're leasing a vehicle? God forbid you're in the term, the vehicle lease is paid off, you decide to pay it off ahead of time, and you get into an auto accident and the car is totaled, you may be out of what's called, you might be out of pocket by a double whammy, meaning you have a payoff plus an additional assigned value to the vehicle. So when you're leasing the actual vehicle and you paid off early, you might still have to come out of pocket if you are in an accident and your vehicle is totaled, meaning you've already paid off the lease, you think you're good to go, and you might have to come out of pocket even more in addition to what would be the buyout price on the vehicle. So what you need to do is when you're looking to lease a vehicle, you need to ask the dealership what occurs in that situation. You also need to ask your P&C company, your auto insurer, what occurs in that situation as well. If you decide you want to go that route, it's better to be prepared ahead of time. Finally, we've brought this to the attention of several of our clients who are looking to maybe purchase or lease a new vehicle. There are auto buyers out there. It is a service that's available. We've had several clients that have had a great experience with it. If these words are foreign to you, you can feel free to give us a phone call. We can discuss what this service is. It's something we do not offer. We are not compensated for, but we can talk about what an auto buyer does and how effective they go to negotiate on your behalf. So keep in mind that all client situations are different, but these are some factors to consider while pursuing this avenue. Hopefully this helps, and enjoy your day today.